Interview with author Kanak Mani Dixit.
My name is Kanak Mani Dixit. I'm a journalist and writer and activist in Kathmandu. Yeah, I have to go back in time to think exactly why I did that, but I would think it's because this, when I was telling my children the story to begin with, the frog had to, the protagonist had to travel a lot. And to travel a lot, it's easier if you are somebody who hops, especially as an animal, because you can either slither or you can walk or you can hop, right? So hopping meant that Bhakta Prasad could cover more terrain, frankly. And that's the one reason Bhakta Prasad came in the form not of a snake or a beetle or a bird. It could have been a bird, actually. Bhakta Prasad could have been a bird, but then a bird will not have as much interaction with beings on the ground. So I guess I settled for a frog. So I started telling stories to my two children, bedtime stories, to Himali and Elam, it started with the frog doing small jaunts out of his froggy terrace, but then he went further and further, and it became a series, in a way, of multiple bedtime stories. Then I started converting them into a column in the Rising Nepal, a weekly column, which was illustrated by Manjushree Thapa, who went on to become a celebrated author. Later on, I felt the columns could be consolidated and put into a children's book. And the children's book, in which I added certain extra elements. Then I was very lucky to find Subhash Rai, who's a very multi-dexterous artist who was able to collaborate with me very nicely, because he knew exactly when I said this is probably a scene that I want. For example, in Asan market, from above, a porter carrying a basket full of mangoes with a frog on top, or Bhakta Prasad going on a tin can along the rapids of the Bagmati down to the Tarai, or finding how does a frog battle the fierce wind of the Kali Gandaki Valley, because if a frog tries to hop, the wind will either push it along or push it backward. These are kind of even complex ideas that Subhash Rai was able to put down into sketches, and I'm proud that for the last 2 decades those sketches have accompanied Bhakta Prasad Bhyaguto, Adventures of a Nepali Frog. My interest in geography actually was sparked by Jesuit fathers in Godavari, St. Xavier's Godavari High School. We used to be taken up to the top of Pulchoki to look at the mountains, so one got a sense of the terrain of Nepal, the Himalaya mountains, the valleys, looking south towards the plains. Incredible hilltop, that is. It's the tallest hilltop in the edges of Kathmandu Valley. But then coming down to the classroom, there was a Father Matthew Manna Parambil, who sadly passed on, who was our geography teacher. And I really believe that my excitement for geography, terrain, rivers, mountains, atmosphere, everything comes from that classroom, grade 5 and 6 in St. Xavier's Godavari School. Well, somebody said recently that Nepal is a complete country. It's a very interesting expression. Nepal is a complete country because it has got variety, it has got diversity in its geography, in its people, in its flora and fauna. So there is no other country in the world where you have a plains that are only 300 feet over sea level, and within 70 miles you got Mount Sagarmatha, Everest, at 29,000 feet. The rivers cut through the valleys and divide the terrain. Different types of people and communities evolved over historical time in different parts of the country. Different languages flourished. The botany, if you look at the botany, the kind of flowers we have got, the kind of plants and trees, the variety, it is profuse and rich. And if you look at the animals, the bird life, there's no country like Nepal. But my country is made interesting by its geography, its flora and fauna, and its people. My attempt in Bhaktay Bhyaguto was to introduce excitement into a child's mind about the country that is Nepal. Bhaktay Bhyaguto has the characteristic that you would call inquisitiveness, the wanting to know. To be part of the Froggy clan in Ichangu in northeast edge of Kathmandu Valley, and to stay there like all frogs have ever done since historical time. He didn't think that was a good idea. He looked out over the valley and he saw there were towns, there were buses, there were people walking about, and he wanted to know more about them. So he hopped down the hill and decided to firstly visit the city of Kathmandu, the Asan market. He finds various creative ways to travel on a bus, on top of a porter's basket, on a tin can, on the river Bhagmati. But once he goes to Kathmandu, he realizes there's more to see, and then more to see. So he goes down to the Tarai, he crosses the Tarai, he goes to Chitwan National Park, he gets a ride with a truck driver lady, and goes to Pokhara, and then he traverses the geography of Nepal south to north, seeing the changes in the terrain and in the changes in people, meets personalities. We talk about different communities in Nepal, but also the fact is, like every country, it's got people, and people are made up of individuals, and individuals have different characteristics, personalities. So Bhaktay Prasad everywhere meets people of different communities, different species even, and they all have different personalities, and that carries the story along. So it is not only a story of geography, it is a story of ultimately of people and personalities. You see, vistas and places have more value when you have to make an effort to go to those places. Because if you walk for 5 days and then see the view of Amadablam, that has a value that is beyond compare, rather than you drive up to Pokhara and see Annapurna or Machapuchre. So you have to make an effort to go somewhere. You should be safe, you shouldn't walk dangerously, certainly, and you should go with friends, not travel and trek alone like I used to do. But then go to places where you can see views or see valleys or rivers, and you know that you have earned that sight. That's the beauty of it. And now the fine places of Nepal to visit, some of which you still have to make an effort too, because the roads are not everywhere, thankfully. The view of Amadablam, the mountain, from Tengboche Monastery. It is celebrated the world over, but it is not a cliche to say it's one of the best views in places to be in Nepal. On the saddle of Tengboche, with the mountains Kangtega and Thamserko on this side, Kwangde on this side, Everest far away, and in front of you Amadablam, one of the finest shaped peaks in the world. And so that would be one for sure. But there would be incredible small places that you wouldn't think about. For example, crossing the Karnali River on the way to Acham. And the Karnali River is in a deep valley, and the water is the flow is very, very deep and fast, and you walk along a tributary which is dry riverbed, which means it's got boulders all over. And Karnali is one of the biggest tributaries of the Ganges, you have to remember. We just tend to think of Nepali rivers as not very large, but they are massive rivers in a global scale. To see Karnali River with in the foreground all the boulders from this tributary, a dry riverbed leading into the Karnali. I still remember that so well. There are many, one of the finest sights if you're walking north to south, because when you go south and you hit the Tarai, most of the time you would hit a road. So you walk and you come to a hill, another hill, and you walk some more, you walk another hill. But there'll come a time when you go up and suddenly you expect to see the other hill, you don't see the other hill, you don't see the other hill, and suddenly there's the expanse of the plains of Nepal, of the Tarai in front of you. That is an experience that is unforgettable. You can still get such an experience in some parts of Nepal, I'm sure, but back then it was all over. The ending of a trek in the plains with the last mountain not emerging in front of you. Nepal has changed a lot since I wrote that book, which means that the Bagmati River is now no longer one in which you could paddle or do whitewater or ride a tin can on. It's mostly sewage. Large parts of Nepal have been connected by roads, which is a good thing because it makes life easier for the villagers. But the value of what we see is also therefore diminished in our eyes because we can get to any place easily. I feel we've lost a lot of our inherent culture. We've lost a lot of our environment. There is oneness coming across the country, and which means we're losing our cultural diversity, we're losing our geographical, ecological diversity, and so that is also an issue that we got to think about very carefully. It would be a good idea to, when one reads Bhaktay Prasad Bhyaguto, to think about what are the changes that have overtaken Nepal since Bhaktay Prasad Bhyaguto was written 2 decades ago. I wrote it in the early 90s. I traveled in the 70s. I wrote Bhaktay Prasad Bhyaguto in the early 90s. So it would be a good idea to see what are the changes that Nepal has seen, but yet it would be a good idea to generate excitement in yourself to go to the places where you can still see our diversity, our beauty, our landscapes and our people. Thank you everyone. I'm happy to have shared these words with you. I hope you enjoyed.